Hi, and welcome to the Improvisers podcast. I'm Neil Thomas, and this is my co-host, Kevin James.
Great. Thank you, Neil. On the Improvisers podcast, we chat to performers about their histories, their practices, their conceptualizations around practice, their aspirations and enthusiasms. Neil, who have we got on today?
Today, it gives great pleasure to be in conversation with Nick Byrne.
Mhm.
Nick talks about growing up in and leaving Newcastle to follow his passion and calling for theatre. And he talks about establishing improvisational culture and events in Canberra.
Nick also speaks of the international context of his teaching and performing. As a teacher, he believes that developing as an improviser is 90% mindset and 10% skill set. Nick's also the host of Improvention, a yearly international performance event in Canberra.
Due to circumstances beyond my control, Kevin carried on this conversation on his own. Heroic effort. Thank you, Kevin.
I laboured on, Neil. Let's go. Good morning, Nick. Welcome to the
Good day.
Improvisers podcast. It's
Thank you.
it's wonderful to have the opportunity to chat to you and knowing you were there in the ACT, Canberra, ACT. I'd love to know more about your performance background, as I'm sure
Mm.
many of the viewers will and want to know. And more importantly, when improvisation became foregrounded in that.
Of course. Uh, yeah, well, strangely, I was well into adulthood when I realized there was some sort of lineage there in that my great-grandparents were musical performers in the UK. She was a Scottish country dancer, and he was a comedic pianist. And by that stage, when I sort of found out about that, I was doing, I guess, what you'd call my first sort of full-time routine out of school, which was mainly piano bar. I'd started in, left school, I'd started in rock bands and so on. But in those days, there was a really good scene. Everywhere had a piano guy in the corner. And 3 or 4 nights, 3 or 4 hours, and you could have above the Australian average wage in cash for sitting in a corner and plonking on a piano. And so I did that whilst I was doing drama at the then very practical and well sorted University of Newcastle drama course, because I grew up in the cultural capital of Gosford, and uh, we were ideally placed for people to leave the town because we're halfway between Sydney and Newcastle. So it's not that there isn't a vibrant art scene, but uh, once it gets to the professional level, most people leave because of the proximity. Um, so yeah, I was doing that, and then I did every job imaginable to try and survive in the performance industry. I was resident entertainer on a cruise ship. I did breakfast radio comedy, and I did some arts administration. I was the coordinator of the New South Wales Bicentennial Festival of Music, which was very large uh, festival. Uh, got got sick of being an arts administrator, so I didn't keep going really with that at the time, and I worked at a place that anybody who went to school in New South Wales and maybe a little bit beyond, between the Whitlam era and the year 2000, would know of, called Old Sydney Town, uh, which was at the time the only full-time permanent acting job in the country. You could get contracts on things, but um, um, and it was really, really interesting. And I would think that you could say my improvisation career started there, because uh, you would do, as an actor at Old Sydney Town, you'd do 5 or 6 scripted activities that are 15 minutes long during 6 hours on site, and the rest was just improvised interaction. But of course, it was really a retirement village for young actors. You couldn't say it was there was any sort of formal development, but just being in front of people and switched on for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, really does something unexpected for your, I guess, your level of focus and, lots of other things. So yeah, there was that. And then I was doing a lot of musical theatre, often as a musical director or a director or something, because it was the only way you could get paid in my town, but also as a performer, and straight scripted theatre. And I started doing a little bit of improvisation in Sydney with the then Theatre Sports Inc. Now improvisation Impro Australia, because an actor friend was doing a bit of it, and he said, "This is a lot of fun. Why don't you come and do it?" So this is sometime in the 90s, and we started a small chapter of that, if you like, up on the Central Coast for a couple of years. And then I was doing a lot of theatre and education touring. Uh, and I actually had a company with 4 full-time teams for a long time. So I was doing that for 12 years. That's what bought a house. Um, but then uh, so that caused me not to be able to run that little chapter, and improvisation went off the boil. But I moved to Canberra to start a family, because I always wanted a lifestyle block, and you could do that. I moved just outside of Canberra, like Four Seasons, in late 2004, and finally I turned up with an old actor friend that I'd grown up with, and just ran into at gigs randomly as we would travel around Australia, by the name of PJ Williams, um, who's continued on that path his whole life, largely in scripted theatre. And we went, aha, at last we're living in the same town. What's a thing we've both done in this, eclectic survival mode we've been in? And we'd both done a little bit of improvisation at Belvoir Street and Belvoir Street Theatre in Sydney. And we said, great, well, let's start that. There wasn't any at that stage. Like Sydney and Melbourne, a theatre sports only type of community had started in the 80s. And it had started here, but some of the main movers had moved on fairly quickly. So there'd been nothing in Canberra in the improvisation realm, or that realm of improvisation, for a long, long time. We ran a couple of trial things, and everybody turned up, and we immediately had 2 full fundamental courses immediately, and Impro ACT was born in April 2005. And then, to complete the history, I guess I always wanted it to be a little bit more than we'd imagined, and we are in this beautiful ruling regional town of Canberra. So quite quickly, I started inviting guests from all sorts of genres to throw in inspiration, and this would result in little weekends of workshops and shows and things beyond our normal stuff. And then I was a very, very fine Melbourne actor called Rama Nicholas, who does a lot of solo shows. Um, she introduced me to more content-driven, serious drama style of improvisation, where is I've I've headed more in the experimental direction than the short fun games thing. anyway, these weekends and things suddenly turned into a national convention called Improvention. There it is, still there. And after a couple of more years, that became an international festival. So I now run Australia's major international festival of that, with guests from 5 continents. A certain Kevin might be going to that one this year, I think. And as a result of that, they assumed that the artistic director of that, my guests, I mean, assumed that, oh, well, he must be one of the real improvisers. And so I get to travel around the world going to all of their events now. And, someone's got to do it. So there you go. There's my entire history, Kevin. Personal life? Okay. No, all right.
No, nope. We'll go there later, Nick.
Okay.
And let's also chat further about Improvention a little bit later. But I think one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on this morning is that we really do come from different performative domains, and maybe there's something very artificial about the separation of domains. But most of the people that we've interviewed for the Improvisers podcast have been Melbourne-based. They've come essentially from a very similar lineage, and it's only been of recent that we've actually been interviewing people from around the world and trying to sort of broaden to cover the whole sort of umbrella of what improvisational performance may be. So having you on this morning is a wonderful opportunity to sort of start to chat further. And secondly, I'm so interested in your global roaming, because it seems as though you've travelled widely through many countries around the world, in Asia, in Europe, and that feels so significant that your participation and possibly influence goes as wide as that. Why don't we talk just for a little about domains, because you talk about your origins, and you're aware to some degree of the sort of origins in Melbourne, many of which have been from the Al Wonder lineage. I wonder if we can just chat a little about what improvisation is for you now. We know what theatre sports is about, but I'm wondering how it's developed with you and where you're at, what you offer, because I see you offer quite a range of things. So let's look more closely at what interests you now, Nick, what improvisation means to you now, and what it is that you offer in terms of teaching and facilitation.
Well, what it means to me, I guess, goes to that. Go figure what you become obsessed with in your life, but it honestly became a calling, I would have to say, in the sense that you come to realize that everything is improvised. Getting out of bed and getting to the kitchen to make a cup of coffee involves all sorts of unexpected moments, but it's not something that society dwells on. They try and plan and ensure against the requirement to improvise, rather than stopping to smell the roses and enjoying all of that. So I guess whilst I'm pursuing the various artistic zones of it as much as I can and enjoying the experiment, I would have to say that the glue that has meant I couldn't leave it is the development of people, and that they get a whole section of their brain opened up to living in a way that seems to be less anxious and much more accepting of various diversities, less judgmental, and you just see that happening on a daily basis, and people report it to you on a daily basis. So it's almost impossible to leave something that has that amount of validation, like I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. And because of that, I think a lot of what people are interested in when you have a teacher or a performer that you're meeting or something, um, I've come to realize in all of those travels that people are very interested in your level of passion. That they're thinking, oh, I wish I could be that passionate about something in my life. And that is partly and quite authentically, part of the delivery is helping people understand that they can make choices to do what they're passionate about, and that they're most likely to be successful in that. And artistically, improvisation for me uh, is literally anything that you could call performance art. Um, as long as it didn't have a script or set choreography. So, uh, yes, folks, yes, in this domain, certainly there will be that first show that you saw that proved the point of what what this domain was. Absolutely, there will be lots of short form theatre sports stuff performed at a amateur level that just gives you just reiterates what you may have thought this domain was. But of course, people who do become focused on this and just concentrate on this, well, the whole essence of what we do is about change and exploration. So at that level of focus, there's a much higher tendency uh, in that sector of my sector to explore long form improvisations that might just look like a play, might look like a physical movement experimental piece, might be a piece of music theatre. Uh, and people around the world come from different backgrounds, so it's really the North American domination of people's entry into this area that creates the typical perception of what it might be. But I would say maybe half the people in my sector from Europe came from a legitimate theatre background. It's very big in places like South American countries. Uh, they often would have come from a physical theatre clowning kind of background, but then moved into this zone. Um, Asian theatre, Asian improvisation has a whole spectrum of fascinating influences that are really opening out. Uh, so it is now anything theatre can be without me still having to learn lines at my age.
Nick, I'm wondering when you speak about that, especially when you speak about growth and people's capacities as they that expand as they're involved in improvising. I'm just thinking two things. One is it the fact that people are able to sort of express themselves increasingly and more confidently and find their particular ways of performing, especially in long form impro? And is it also the content of what they're exploring, that they have a chance performatively to explore the content of living and express that and share that with others and have responses? I wonder how much is sort of the capacity to perform, and the other is the content of what is performed as I guess a form of arts expression, sharing, and being in the world in that way.
Yes, I think at the obviously the full-time professional uh, in this area is due to the arts situation, that's only a small proportion of it. So the majority of performers at festivals, they could be any skill level, but probably had a day job or actually earn more of their living from a different part of the arts sector. Um, so there's a little bit of a separation there. I think at the full-time professional level, uh, people tend to, I guess, specialize more and more. So some of the professionals are very driven by perhaps, though it's all about the art, it's not about the growth. Some are all about the growth. And for me, I just don't make a separation, because to go to the first question, uh, your development as an improviser for me is 90% mindset and 10% skill set. If you can come to terms with the fact that you're okay and what you've got is okay, and that you're very relaxed about that, that is the main determinant of improving your on stage performance for improvisation. So in that sense, no matter what kind of crazy experiment I'm subjecting these people to when I come up with a new show format, there isn't really for me a separation between the personal growth aspect and the artistic content. But for many there is. But I would certainly say that I spend a lot more of my workshop time teaching people to accept themselves through the performance exercises um, than I do. Here's how to improve working your way out of a glass box, because there are people who are, I'm a jack of all and master of none in that sort of sense. But also, if you can learn any of the skill sets to a high degree, but if your mind is still too cluttered with self-doubt, am I good enough? Does this look good? Any of that, you can't access your skills properly anyway.
Yeah, so I haven't envisaged sort of three areas in relationship to improvising. One is skills that have either been pre-developed or develop along the way. And the other is sort of intention and attitude, which is the domain that you're speaking about. And the other area I sort of call whimsy, of being available to emergent material. But I'm so interested in what you just said then as well, that when people can find the reason, can trust the resource that they are, and know that they're well resourced, and it's a matter of living that out as a performer, and then skills can support that, and the availability of material that emerges relationally or within a performance starts to flow, then those three aspects are sort of inherent. How do you go about, I wonder, supporting people to actually identify the resource that they are as performer?
Mm. I think they just need to experience uh, positive results uh, a few times in a row through the positive behaviors. So if you do exercises that require some sort of trick to them, like let's see, if we can rhyme lines back and forth to each other or something like that, that's uh, you're on a terrible wicket, because that's more like a magic trick. Either the rabbit comes out of the hat or it doesn't. Um, and so those sorts of quick and clever things don't tend to assist people to come out of themselves. But there are lots of exercises that I would call actor proof, that you could get anyone off the street and just demonstrate a couple of the very fundamental skill sets that they're enjoying and playing with and having a relationship with their scene partner straight away and inevitably, that has no reliance on their skill set. That is, it's just positive proof. If you do one or two of these fundamental things, then this will occur, and look at you now. So uh, that's one way. Uh, and I work a lot on authenticity for the same reasons. Uh, so I know you've done a bit of playback and this sort of thing. So I do a lot of work with people's honest stories um, in a non-performative manner, just so that they realize. I will say to them, okay, if you're going out there to perform something and see if people like it, then you're probably going to rate your performances on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you're heading home after a 2, you're kicking yourself, you're feeling horrible about it. But if you're actually performing authentically, this is me, which is absolutely doable within a fictional character or fictional context, which happy to go into if you would like. But if you're presenting authentically, you are starting at a 5 or 6 because you cause the empathetic human reaction in the audience. They've already accepted you. The 1s and 2s, they're just gone. If you can therefore put in your training regime circumstances where people behave authentically, as simply perhaps just as telling each other truthful stories, that kind of thing, the results are so reliable that it doesn't take too many times of drilling to go, well, here is a plate of chocolate. Here is a plate of feces. Which one will I eat today? I think I'll have the one that tastes nice. It doesn't take long if you're getting 50% good feedback and 50% poor feedback one way, or always good feedback the other way. It doesn't take long for people to start behaving that way.
Nick, I'm thinking of the term playfulness. It's maybe overused. It's too readily used, but helping people to actually access playfulness again. And that I'm not talking about humor, although it could be inherent, but actually that responsiveness, that playfulness, that ability to be both maybe authentic, but actually light on their feet again, and light, I suppose. Speak a little about sort of playfulness and the implications of that.
Uh, I don't think it's overused. I don't think it's overused, but perhaps interpreted in a narrow fashion. Uh, we would probably mostly imagine that authenticity is a state devoid of agendas, perhaps. But in fact, there is no state devoid of an agenda. If you didn't have a motivation in any of your interactions, you just wouldn't do them. You'd just stay asleep. So right now, you would like to make a nice podcast for your viewers and listeners to enjoy and so on. So whilst we're both behaving very authentically to each other, and of course there's an agenda. Of course there is. So once we just accept this reality and get off the trip of, oh, you're playing games with me, don't play games with me. Oh my God, forming a relationship. When was there ever a stronger agenda? Of course. If you like someone, you want them to like you back, and of course there's an agenda. So there is always play going on, regardless of the lightness or seriousness of any situation and any interaction. It's happening. It's not about a term that's used in our realm a lot is finding the game, but it's losing popularity amongst, well, certainly amongst me, because it's not necessary to find the game. That involves some sort of work. You just have to become aware of the game that is actually happening in a particular interaction, and you choose to engage and grow that one, or alter it, develop it. So playfulness is simply a state of being that it will cause a relationship of thoughts in a theatrical sense. So if you can just engender a state of play, it might be that two people are doing a flirtation. It might be that they're playing a status game with each other in their interaction. They might be hiding from each other. They are causing some sort of relationship. Playfulness causes a relationship. And for me, relationship is the key thing in collaborative improvisation. The focus on the other person, which gets you out of your head and your own worries. And it's what people are interested in watching. Nobody cares that these two people are going to the zoo. Nobody cares how stupid the monkey in the cage is. They only care about why these two people are together at the zoo and having this particular interaction. So relationship, to me, it is more important than the very important areas of character or narrative, because developing relationship, which often is from playfulness, will cause the seeds of character and will cause the seeds of narrative. It will. Whereas if you, for example, come from a character background that could be more about me, I can create this character without you. So it's possible that I don't cause relationship from character. Hopefully I do anyway. I'm not meaning to put down the character-driven improvisers out there. Oh, but it's not inevitable. And similarly, you can have the world's greatest story and everyone's asleep if it doesn't bring about relationship and character. Yeah.
Talking about relationship, Nick, and I'm wondering about solo performance versus more collaborative ensemble-based performance. And obviously, what we're talking about now in terms of relationship, with collaborative work, it's inherent. But with solo work, there is the relationship to the audience, and I guess that is the central relationship then. But talk a little about solo performance, maybe for yourself and maybe for those students that you support along that line.
I think firstly, it is important to pursue the solo end of things because it makes you self-sufficient. If you're reliant on, if you've got some expectation of your fellow performer, even if you're not performing solo, then you haven't quite made it to the nirvana of being relaxed enough. If you're reliant on, oh my God, what are they going to give back to me? What a fellow performer does or doesn't do, it's simply what happened. It's simply what is on the table. It doesn't have to be something that you have an expectation of or a judgment of. So by pursuing solo improvisation, it helps you with that. As a touring artist, most people that came from, I guess, the American realm of my domain, they would be used to festivals where troupes travel and bring their little show and everyone shows off their show to each other, and we'll call that a festival. I didn't know that when I started mine, and I tend to travel alone with the tyranny of distance and everything. And so I'm more of a sector that tends to teach something to a group who then performs it on the road. But because you might turn up at festivals and events of all sorts of designs, you better have a solo show in your back pocket. So that's really what got me into solo work. And I would say that was a great test of myself. That showed up in me the times when I was, oh no, Nick, you're trying to now put on a fake show in the hope of impressing someone, and yet when you let go and just be authentic, look at the results. So it was sort of a boot camp of what I was already trying to do and saying to others. And I think it was a great chance for me to improve my work generally. But I would say about the relationship thing, well, the closer you get to really being in the moment, the more it can be the case that whatever I just did is the next offer, and I'm not planning further ahead than that. I know that the form will actually be stronger by me trusting that it's going to come out of those fundamentals. So I'm responding to my own offer. So absolutely, there's a relationship with the audience, and that's a very nuanced relationship that I'm very interested in with the audience. And yes, if it wasn't solo, there's relationship with your scene partners, but there's the relationship with yourself and your own psyche works exactly in the same way. So as a solo improviser, you're just presenting an offer to yourself and responding to that offer as well. So it for me, it ends up being the same relationship as if it was a scene partner.
Nick, I met you in Canberra in January at a workshop on spontaneous poetry, I think it was called, and I was very impressed by your approach, I think, to being in the world, to your worldview. You seem to be politically very active in a way. You had just traveled to Ukraine. You came back, and I had the opportunity to be a part of the show that you put on, which was really a very strong political commentary. And but there's something about it sounds like you're very well grounded in your travels and in your intentions. And there's an element of politicization around what you do and commentaries that you make. I'd like to know a little more about, and maybe a little about your travels to Ukraine and what took you there at a time of war and what transpired.
Mm. Well, I think in the travels generally, sure, I'd like to think that my at least ethical, if not political framework helps me make some of the choices about where I'll go and what I'll do. But just the incessant desire to be exposed to different cultures and different circumstances and that has to be a major driver. So some, I guess, in my sort of position around the world some will typically go, well, it's pretty hard to make a buck that way. I'm just going to concentrate on, say, the major European cities and get in some euros, and that's how I'm going to survive. But because of this exploration desire, I'll tend to do one of those cities, and then where's some crazy place with no money at all that I can explore. And there's so many, there's myriad benefits to that in your life. But I was for a long time very well booked in Eastern Europe, and Eastern Europe became quite a big part of my life, and including Russia. There's a Russian Improvisation Festival in St. Petersburg, which is fantastic, and I did a lot of work in Moscow as well. And so I have friends all over Eastern Europe who I guess seem to relate to me. There were a lot of places I love, and it's always the people you're with that tend to make that place special. But I don't know, something about the psyche seemed to compute. So I guess I was more popular in Eastern Europe. Also felt pretty good, I'd have to say, having done a little bit of theatre study. Oh my God, the first time I I'm delivering theatre workshop to the Russians. I have made it, haven't I? You know, so that was fun. You always felt like, even though you were just in another improvisation class with people from all sectors of the community, you always felt like these very well-built students were about to say, of course, Professor, can I have, would you like 4 backward flip-flops with that? And I'd kind of think, actually, yes, I'd quite like that. um, so so I guess that's a bit of background, and it means that when this particular conflict came to a head, it was really an awful time. I mean, I was very, very sad about it, and it struck me more personally than the many, many valid conflicts that are around. So I guess that was my connection to that. I'm still in contact with a lot of my Russian artist friends who haven't yet been blacklisted, and the director of that festival in St. Petersburg I actually had out here over summer at a summer school, uh, and I'm very conscious. I don't have a Ukrainian flag in my profile or anything like that because um, I'm also conscious of what it must feel like for Russians in Russia who are progressive but have uh, and managed to stay sort of connected. Just the barrage of, you know, it's anti-current government. It's not about you, but it would. I'm conscious that it must hurt. Um, anyway, this took me to Ukraine. I felt like, well, I'm not going to change my profile picture, but I just feel I've got to do a thing, something. What can I do? And uh, surprisingly, even though it's a place that is absolutely surrounded by countries that do stuff in my realm, uh, none of the other touring improvisers had been in since the conflict had opened out. And uh, people have to imagine. I always say you're not going to cancel your improv tour to Chicago, are you? Because there's a much higher chance of you dying of gun violence by going to your Chicago summer school than there is uh, going to the major central or western cities of Ukraine. It's just an uncomfortable bus ride, and when the siren goes off, go downstairs. It's but yes, of course, the feeling that there's a war on is ever present. And of course, every Ukrainian has a family member or friend who's dead or limbless or displaced or something like that. But in the major cities, life goes on. And the national personality of Ukraine is fabulous. I call them the Irish of the East, where where a typical post-Soviet Russian accent might be quite like Australians, perhaps, often quite monotone, uh, whilst the Ukrainians are speaking a Slavic language. It's really lyrical and melodic. It's really beautiful and poetic. Uh, and that, regardless of any situation, a bit like Australians, they're going to make a joke of anything, any topic that you think of. So it's very pleasant, and boy oh boy, the hotels and the cafes of all the countries I've worked in, you're always, of course, nodding and enjoying the national foods and their specialties and things, but you can't help thinking, oh my God, how lucky is Australia? It's got every ingredient in the world. It's pretty hard to get a poor quality feed or a coffee in a cafe. Hi, Melbourne. And uh, really, there's not many places quite like that. But Ukraine, wow, I had very, very consistent food. There's design, there's the focus on design in any hotel and cafe you go in. It's really maintained its panache.
Nick, we're starting to reach the our time actually. 45 minutes is almost gone of conversing, and it feels as though we've only just scratched the surface. There were so many places we could have dived in and explored further. But I'd love to give you an opportunity before we close to present something about Improvention, the event that happens each December in Canberra. Go forth.
Well, I think I mentioned on air its development a little bit in that it grew organically into a festival from, oh, I better put on a show. Oh, maybe I should get a guest from outside to make it right. Oh, now we might as well have a workshop. Oh, it now seems to be a long weekend with guests from a couple of cities until it became a national convention. And that was really important at the time because um, there were organizations in my domain that in every capital city at least, uh, but they were quite disparate. They might have a feature event each year where they invited someone from the other city, but that was it. There was no guest sharing to make international touring simpler. They were stylistically different, sometimes at loggerheads. And Improvention really did bring these people together. I'm quite proud of that. And they've basically collaborated more ever since. But it was only natural that it then became international. And now people still come from all over Australia, but I guess the focus is on the international guests. So Improvention is a whole week. This year it's December 8 to 14 in Canberra. There'll be approximately 25 professional guests delivering over 50 workshops and about 25 to 30 shows, which is a lot in a town the size of Canberra in a week. In various venues, like I say, every style of theatre. Yes, there's the short form fun stuff, but very experimental. This year, there's a focus on this very, very strong group of women coming. That's one focus. There's quite a strong physical theatre clown component this year, and there's quite a strong musical focus this year. But it changes. It will be. We try to make this a very experimental festival. I say to people, please propose the thing that you don't know yet whether it's going to work and that the other festivals said no to. So we try for that. But yes, people will come from all over the world and certainly all over the country as either participants or guests. And it's a big immersive week.
Great, Nick. And on that note, I think we need to end. It just feels like this could be part one, there could be a part two, there could be a part three, and so forth. So thank you for your availability. I'm I'm both intrigued and so interested in both your past and what you offer, and in the life that you seem to engender around what you do, and the interest that you seem to take in people, in change, and in facilitating and furthering prospects in the world. So, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for doing what you do. All the best with Improvention this year and for all other things.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been an honor, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Great. Thank you.